Welcome back. Hope everyone had a good Yom Tov, an easy fast. So, it's a little bit more difficult to prepare for this class. Very, very tiring day yesterday, obviously. And but nonetheless, I got up early this morning to prepare. And many things to speak about. And obviously the Yom Tov, which we're going into right now, which is coming right on the heels of Yom Kippur, is Sukkos, which begins on Monday night. And I mentioned a few weeks ago that this month, the month of Tishrei, is called the Yerach Esanim, the month of mighty ones, because we have so many mighty, powerful Yom Tovim. This is the most Yom Tov dense month of the entire year. We have obviously Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, then we have Sukkos, and then we have Sukkos followed by Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah, which is a separate Yom Tov unto itself. And even before that, you have a Hoshana Rabbah, which is a special day, the last day of Sukkot, right before Simchas Torah. So there's no month which has so many disparate, contrasting themes as the month of Tishrei, from Rosh Hashanah all the way to Simchas Torah, which seem like complete different and opposite ends of the spectrum. So it's called the Yerach Esanim, the month of mighty ones, and again, there's so many angles to go on this and to talk about. And I was trying to think about a little bit of a different approach or a different perspective, which I hadn't heard of before, hadn't thought about before. And then, fortunately this morning I opened up to us in a safe which I have, Nesiv Shalom, which is written by the Slonim Rebbe, the late Slonim Rebbe, beautiful essays on the spirituality of the Parshas and the spirituality of the Yom Tovim as well. So let me begin with this, and what I'm going to say is based upon what he says, that there's nothing without significance. There's nothing in Yiddishkeit, there's nothing in Torah which doesn't have meaning and significance. There's no accidents, obviously. Nothing is by accident. Everything is with design and purpose. So when we think about this coming Shabbos, when we look at this coming Shabbos, which is tomorrow, so I'd never thought about this Shabbos being of any significance whatsoever. I just thought, Shabbos between Yom Kippur and Sukkos. Yom Kippur is yesterday, Sukkos Monday night, and you have Shabbos in the middle. So I never thought of there's anything special about this Shabbos, but he actually opens up our eyes and our hearts to appreciate the specialness of this coming Shabbos. There's something very, very special which serves as a link between Yom Kippur and Shabbos and Sukkos. So first of all, let's just appreciate a little bit about Shabbos. So what is Shabbos? So Shabbos really has two names to it. It's called Shabbos or Shabbat. It also has the name Yom HaShavi'i, the seventh day of the week. So what's the significance? What's the difference between the two different descriptions of it? So Yom HaShavi'i, that's the seventh day of the week, implies it's the seventh day after 6 days of the week. So we have a tradition that whatever has taken place in the 6 days of the week is now brought into full focus on the seventh day. So the seventh day of the week, Shabbos, is able to capture and amalgamate all of the energies and the spiritual forces which existed in the 6 days preceding. So in that sense, so Shabbos is an opportunity to be able to reflect back and to gather together the energies, the spiritual inspiration, the thoughts, the reflections we've had during the week, and to reflect upon that on Shabbos. And, the advantage of Shabbos, the tremendous blessing and advantage of Shabbos, we're free to be able to do that. We're free to be able to reflect upon the week. I'm free because I don't have my computer on. I'm free because my phone's not ringing. I'm free because I'm not driving anywhere. I'm free because all my food is prepared. I'm free because there's no TV. I'm free. I'm free of all of the disturbances and all of the static and interference which bombards my mind and my brain and my heart and my thoughts all through the week. I'm free. So it's a day of freedom. Shabbos is unbelievable. It's an unbelievable gift. I was thinking actually about this yesterday because Shabbos Shabbosim, Yom Kippur is called a Shabbos Shabbos and a Shabbos of all Shabboses, where, we're sitting there in the shul yesterday. There's nothing else to do but to connect. There's nothing else to do but to develop one's spirituality. You don't have to worry about anything else because you can't do anything else. But that's true every single day of every single week. In fact, actually, one of the things which I've known this before, for some reason, didn't strike me as significantly as this year, I was reading something from one of the famous works, the Derech Hashem, the Way of God, written by the Ramchal, Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, a famous Kabbalist, and he talks about the sequence and the relationship between the different Yom Tovim. So he's talking about how each Yom Tov, one Yom Tov has greater holiness than the next Yom Tov. But what's the holiest Yom Tov? And actually the context where he's discussing this is Yom Kippur. So what's the holiest Yom Tov? You'd say Yom Kippur. No, the holiest Yom Tov is Shabbos. Shabbos surpasses and is holier than any other of the days of the year, any other Yom Tovim. The holiest day, the holiest Yom Tov is Shabbos. And most people don't realize that, don't appreciate that. So it's even higher, it's even holier. The potential for Shabbos is greater than Yom Kippur. So, so just the power of Shabbos and the ability for Shabbos to be able to avail us, the ability to be able to reflect back and to think about our identity, who we are, our relationships. And that's the idea of looking back over the previous week. And that's called Yom Shavi. It's a day of the seventh day where we are able to now absorb and receive and reflect upon the energies of the previous week. But in addition, it's also called Shabbos as well, because there's another principle as well about Shabbos, that Shabbos also contains within it the oros, the lights, the spiritual forces and energies of the week coming as well. Because there's only 6 days of the week. So now there's only 6 days of the week. Shabbos is a reality unto itself. It's an island by itself. So not only does it give us time to reflect over the previous week, but it also contains the energy, the power of the future week is also contained within the power of Shabbos. So Shabbos has the light of the future week. It also has the light, the energies of the previous week. So now that gives us a little bit of an appreciation about the significance of this coming Shabbos. Because how many Shabboses have the energies and the light of a Yom Kippur preceding it, and the light and the energies of a Sukkos following it? It's only this week. There are actually a couple of Shabbosim in the year which have lights, powerful lights from before the week and the week afterwards. That's Chol HaMoed. Every Yom Tov, you have the Yom Tov of Sukkos and the Yom Tov of Pesach, which lasts for 7 or 8 or 9 days, and you always have a Shabbos in between those days as well. So the way Pesach is and Sukkot is, it's structured that there's a Yom Tov at the beginning of the holiday, a Yom Tov at the end. The whole week is called a Yom Tov, but the intermediate days are called Chol HaMoed, and there's always a Shabbos in between, typically a Shabbos in between, which is the kind of the fulcrum of the two ends. So there was a famous rabbi, the Maharil, his name was the Maharil. It says that he said that Eini nehna mishum Shabbos b'shana. I never had any delight from Shabbos in the year except the Shabbos of Chol HaMoed, of the intermediate days, for this reason, because the Shabbos of Chol HaMoed was laden with the lights of the first Yom Tov preceding it and the lights afterwards, the spiritual light, the spiritual energy. But the truth is, this Shabbos also has that same power. It has the light of Yom Kippur, and it has the light of Sukkot in it as well. So the question is exactly, what exactly is the nature of this light, so to speak, the spiritual energy that is contained in the Shabbos from Yom Kippur, and also the light of Sukkot, and why also does it coincide with the Torah reading this week? Because the Torah every year whenever I come to this parsha, I basically skip it when I read it in shul, but we never talk about it because it's always the Shabbos before Sukkot. But the name of the portion this week is called Ha'azinu. And I'm just going to tell you very, very briefly what it's about right now. I'll talk more about it afterwards. But even still, it's still missing a lot of exploration. But it's the second to last portion of the entire Torah, Ha'azinu, and it's called the song. It's the song with which Moshe spoke of in the previous chapter. So it's a poetic presentation. It's poetic. It's a song and of all sorts of different descriptions of creation, the world, life, existence, and it's written like a song. If you look at I'll show it up on the screen. The way that the text appears in the Torah, you can see, is that it's written in columns, 2 columns, like a song, like a poem. So that's how it's written. It's called the Hazilus, the song of Moshe. And in which Moshe calls heaven and earth to bear witness to the calamities that will befall Israel if it sins, and the ultimate joy that will come with the final redemption. That's in a nutshell what the portion's about. So again, the question is, what is the connection between this song of Hazinu, the portion this week, and this principle, this idea that Shabbos, today, this Shabbos, is the melding together of the kochos, the forces, the spiritual energies of Yom Kippur, as well as the spiritual energies of Sukkot to come. So in order to understand that, we have to just appreciate a little bit more what is the specialness of Yom Kippur and what's the specialness of Sukkot. I'm only going to focus on one dimension of that, of Yom Kippur, and I'm going to focus on one dimension of each of them. So obviously Yom Kippur was part of the days of awe. The days of awe, AWA, and these are days which are described as days of reverence and fear. So, different Yom Tovim have different energies, different spiritual feelings associated with them. Rosh Yom Kippur, as much as it has a tremendous amount of joy within it, but I mentioned in the classes preceding that the backdrop of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur is fear. It's the fear of God. It's the reverence. It's the awe of God. It's having fear. It's realizing that there are consequences to life. There are consequences to our actions. So it's days of awe. That's how they're described. They're not called days of love. But all of a sudden, after Yom Kippur is over, and you feel this at the end of Yom Kippur, last night in Shul, there's the whole intensity of Ne'ilah, which is very much shrouded in this feeling of reverence and seriousness, even though there's joy there, but it's seriousness as well, very, very serious, because we know that, our lives are on the line, and it's our teshuv which makes all the difference. It's the recitation of the 13 attributes of mercy which makes a big difference. So in that atmosphere of reverence and awe, all of a sudden, by the end of Yom Kippur's over, the sounding of the shofar, and all of a sudden the whole shul breaks out into singing, and we're dancing around the shul, and it's so beautiful. It's unbelievable. Like we sing, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim. Everyone's walking around the bima, and it's, if anyone hasn't seen it, anyone who's seen it, been part of this, can testify to the fact that there's no other time in the entire year that maybe Simchas Torah, but it's Yom Kippur, at the end of Yom Kippur, this like dramatic shift from this sense of awe to great joy at the end of it. It's beautiful. But it's not over. It's not over, because as soon as we come back from shul and we break the fast, we right away go into the next mitzvah, the next Yom Tov, which is Sukkot. So Sukkot, what is the theme of Sukkot? So if Yom Kippur is the theme of awe, fear, reverence for God, Sukkot is the exact opposite. And in fact, it's very, very interesting that every Yom Tov is described in the Torah with certain words. I mentioned with Rosh Hashanah, the very first mention of Rosh Hashanah in the Torah, the theme of Rosh Hashanah is Zichron Teruah, we said. It's a day of remembering through the shofar, that God remembers us for good through our blowing of the shofar. That's the first description of Rosh Hashanah in the Torah. Yom Kippur is described in the Torah as a day of kapara, of atonement, right, of atonement. So every Yom Tov has its salient theme. So what is the salient theme of Sukkot? What is the theme of Sukkot? How does the Torah describe Sukkot? And it's very interesting that the only Yom Tov that the Torah assigns an emotion, a human emotion to, is Sukkot. Because, for example, Yom Kippur, atonement is not a human emotion. That's what's happening to us. We're being forgiven and atoned for. Rosh Hashanah is not the human emotion of, it's God remembering us. But the only Yom Tov which is assigned a human emotion as being the theme of the day and the theme of the whole Yom Tov is Sukkot. Because it says, V'somachta b'chagecha, v'ha'isa ach sameach, which means rejoice in this festival, and you'll only be happy. Happiness and joy is the theme of Sukkot. Happiness and joy. And everything else revolves around the periphery of that theme of happiness and joy. So that we have the Lulav and Esrog, we have the Sukkah, we have the Ushpiz, and have all the different mitzvahs of the Yom Tov of Sukkos. But the central theme of Sukkos is joy, is happiness. Now, joy and happiness only comes from feelings of love and connection. So joy and happiness is something which comes when a person feels love for something. So when we compare Yom Kippur to Sukkos, they're complete opposites. You've got Yom Kippur, which is fear and awe and reverence for God. And then right away, we go into this opposite theme of love and joy. They're two opposites of each other. But that's what happens. So it begins on Monday night officially, but it even began last night as soon as we started singing L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim. And then we came home after breaking the fast. And then ideally, and I did it this year, and sometimes I don't do it, but I went right outside to my backyard, starting putting my sukkah together. Because the Shulchan Aruch says that we're supposed to go from one mitzvah to the next, not delay, to go from the fasting of Yom Kippur right away to the building of the sukkah. But that juxtaposition, and that very, very sharp juxtaposition of Yom Kippur to Sukkos is teaching us that there's a melding, and there can be a melding, there can be a harmony between the fear of Hashem on the one hand and the love of Hashem on the other hand. And we've spoken about this idea many times, but I want to speak about it again because Judaism requires both. Both elements are essential to Judaism. Fear of Hashem and love of Hashem. Now, what is fear of Hashem? What does fear mean? Fear means being cautious about dangers, being cautious, taking precautions because there are spiritual dangers, just like there are physical dangers. No one is afraid. No one's afraid to talk about, I'm afraid to, whatever. I'm not going to get into the earlier conversation before the class began, but we're afraid of illnesses. We're afraid of going places or doing things which could make us sick. So no one's afraid to say that I'm afraid to do X, Y, or Z because it's going to make me physically sick or unwell. That's normal. That's part of life. So there's also a phenomena called I'm also afraid, I'm concerned about doing something which is going to be spiritually detrimental to myself as well. That's called fear. That's called fear of sin, fear of consequences. But it rises to the highest level of reverence and awe of the seriousness of God, the seriousness of what this Yiddishkeit is all about. That's fear. Now, by itself, it's not always so kind of comfortable. It's not always so, we don't want to live a life of fear. That's why we have the balance to that. We have the balance, which is love and joy. And in a true relationship, a healthy relationship, both concepts are essential. And this plays out in so many aspects of life. And it plays out in a relationship with another person. Because we can't just have love and joy with another individual. We have to have fear with another person. What's the fear with another person? Respecting boundaries, not crossing the other person's boundaries. That's what fear is. Fear is I don't want to cross the boundary. I'm going to hold back. I'm not going to do something which is going to trigger you, which is going to overstep you, it's going to insult you, which is going to it's going to hurt you. And by hurting you, it's going to hurt me as well. It's going to hurt the relationship. That's called fear in a human relationship. There is a beautiful pasuk. Now, Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs, is the kind of quintessential allegory of the love between the Jewish people and Hashem, right? Because I think I mentioned this last week as well, that the love which is expressed inside Shir HaShirim is really the love between the Jewish people and Hashem, and it's presented like between a man and a woman. But there's a beautiful pasuk in chapter 5, verse 10, and it says that Dodi tzach v'adom, my beloved is tzach. Now tzach is clear-skinned and white, pure, clear-skinned, and adom is ruddy. So the Slono Rebbe explains that they're two contrasting, descriptions of how my beloved is. This is the Jewish people describing Hashem. My beloved Hashem is pure, is clear-skinned, but also ruddy as well. That's connoting those two different dimensions. There is a love which is clear-skinned, which kind of reminds us of love and connection and joy and like a feeling of goodness with that person, but also ruddy as well. That evokes that feeling of fear and reverence for Hashem as well. So in my relation with Hashem, I have fear and love as well. Both go together. So this is true in every relationship, but it's certainly true in Judaism as well, in our relationship with God, because the love is what brings us close to him, to have joy with him, to do mitzvahs, and to have joy in doing mitzvahs, which is all about all expressions of giving to God. But then the fear is holding back and recognizing, that there are, just like there are physical dangers in life, there are spiritual dangers as well. I have to observe those boundaries. That's called fear of Hashem, reverence of Hashem. But this now, so Yom Kippur is the fear. Sukkos is the exact opposite, the joy and the love. And where do they meet? They both meet tonight and tomorrow. They meet tonight and tomorrow on Shabbos. Now Shabbos is the perfect vessel for the harmony of these two opposing forces. And why is that? Because how is Shabbos described? Shabbos is described as Zochor v'Shamor. Shabbos, it says Zochor v'Shamor. In the Torah, there are 2 times the Shabbos is described in the Torah. A few more times than that. But the 2 main times that Shabbos is described is in the 10 Commandments. We know that the third of the 10 Commandments is Shabbos, right? Shabbos is the third of the 10 Commandments, fourth, whatever, is of the 10 Commandments. But the 10 Commandments are listed twice in the Torah, once in Exodus and once in Deuteronomy. The difference between the 2 presentations of Shabbos is the first place it says, Zochor es Yom Shabbos l'kadesho. Remember Shabbos to sanctify it. And in the second place it says, observe Shomer es Yom Shabbos. Observe it, guard Shabbos. And this is where so both words are used, both verbs are used. Yet the 10 Commandments were only given once. So the tradition is brought down in the Talmud that when Hashem uttered the word Zochor, keep Shabbos, Zochor v'Shomer b'dibur echad ne'emru. Both the word Zochor, remember Shabbos, and Shomer, guard it, was said in one breath. Only God could do that in one word. It was put together. But what does Zochor, remember Shabbos, refer to? So Zochor Shabbos refers to all of the proactive activities we do as expressions of love and connection to God. For example, making Kiddush on Shabbos Friday night. It's having Oneg Shabbos, enjoying Shabbos, having like a schnapps on Shabbos. It's having a Shabbos meal. It's taking a walk. It's spending time with friends and family. It's all of the enjoyable, proactive activities of Shabbos which create this form of connection to God ultimately. That's called Zochor es Yom Shabbos. But then the Shamor, the guarding of Shabbos, is the exact opposite. That's holding back. Guard the Shabbos. Hold back. Don't cross the boundaries. Don't do the things we shouldn't do. Hold back. Now, by holding back and not doing those things we shouldn't do, it actually what gives us access to that spiritual, island of peace, which I was speaking about before. But the first and foremost thing to think about is holding back, stopping those malachos, not doing those activities. That's the other side. So you have both the proactive, which is more like love and connection and doing things for the other. And then the shom is the holding back. It's the reverence. It's the guarding the boundaries. That's the fear. So Shabbos is the perfect vessel for the harmony of both love and fear all together into one. That's the beauty of Shabbos. It harmonizes both those opposing forces. So now we have those 2 opposing forces, starting with Yom Kippur, but then switching to Sukkos. Where do they meet and where are they brought together? They're brought together on Shabbos in this harmony of the 2 opposites. And again, just to repeat again, that these ideas of these 2 opposites of love and fear, by themselves, they don't stand by themselves. Having only love, unbounded love, is not healthy. Having only fear is also not healthy. By themselves, they don't stand by themselves. And they can sometimes be very, very, non-harmonious with each other. I was, this morning when I was preparing, so I was thinking about this idea of harmonizing 2 opposing forces. So I'm thinking of music, in music. I'm looking at Steve is here today. So we know music, it's unbelievable how you can take chords, dissonant chords, and you can take a chord by itself and it sounds terrible. But then a good musician knows how to blend it together with other chords and other notes to make it really beautiful. If anyone's interested in looking into this, Steve, I'll tell you, it's called Piano with Johnny. Piano with Johnny. You can look him up. He has a YouTube channel, and he demonstrates unbelievable. Like he plays this chord. It's horrible, terrible, and it sounds so terrible. He says, "Watch this." and he blends it together with a few other notes. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. But that's the idea. So you put fear by itself, you put love by itself. It's that, they don't, there are times when that is but in the big picture of our Jewish experience and our lives, they always blend together. When they're blended together, that's what creates music. That's what creates a harmony. So this is what Shabbos is. This is the beauty of this coming Shabbos, the blending together these two midos, these two attributes in our relationship to God. Always keeping in mind, to what extent am I embracing my fear in the sense of observing those boundaries, not crossing boundaries with God and with other people to hurt others, hurt God, or so to speak, hurt God. And to what extent do I have my love? Are they balanced in my life? This Shabbos is an opportunity. But the question is, why this Shabbos? Why is Ha'azinu, the song of Ha'azinu, the appropriate portion for this message? Well, maybe you already understand it. But before I give the full explanation, I'll read to you a commentary given by Rabbi Gedalia Shor as to what, just in general, the theme of Ha'azinu is. Not exactly what I'm saying right now, but I'll go to what I'm going to say in a second, but just to give this as an introduction. He says, just as all the notes in a chord and all the voices and instruments in an orchestra blend together to form a single sound, so too all of creation sings in harmony to proclaim Hashem's unity. So the focus he's making is that all of creation sings the unity of Hashem. The Parsha of Ha'azinu is written in the form of a song to remind the Jewish people that all of creation resonates in harmony with their actions. How the world behaves, so to speak, is in consort together with our actions. So the whole world is one big harmony. So that's how he presents it. So I'd like to suggest another aspect of this as well is that Ha'azinu is the portion of harmony. And the other harmony which we are discovering, which we are experiencing on Shabbos, this coming Shabbos, is the harmony of our Jewish experience, the harmony of our lives, the harmony of blending together all of the different forces and the kochos, the spiritual power that we have, of loving God, of having joy with God, of having joy in doing his mitzvahs, but balanced together with the fear and the reverence which needs to be in place as well. And there's harmony. They by themselves, they may not be so effective entirely by themselves, but when they're balanced together, that creates music. It creates music, and that's why. And Ha'azinu is the song of harmony, which is this coming Shabbos. And what's the end result? The end result is we truly go into the sanctuary of Hashem. We enter into the palace of God, because that's what we need to get into the palace of God, to have this balance between the two forces. And as it says also in Shir HaShirim, beautiful pasuk as well in Song of Songs, it says, Mashcheni acharecha nerutza haviani hamelech hadorav nagila v'nismecha bach, which says, that we're saying as the Jewish people to Hashem, please Hashem, draw me after you, let us run. The king has brought me to his chambers. Let us delight and rejoice in your love. Because when we are connected, we're connected to Hashem, we are in the chambers of Hashem. We are in Haviani Amelech Hadorov. We're in the chambers of Hashem. By being connected, we become into the show. And we have it all happening all at once. Why? Because Shabbos is described as going into the chambers of Hashem. That's a separate, place where it discusses that. But we're in the chamber of Hashem. We're in the palace of Hashem on Shabbos. Certainly Yom Kippur, we're in the chamber of Hashem, because we go into the Holy of Holies like the Kohen Gadol, the high priest on Yom Kippur. We read about that yesterday. That's what Yom Kippur is like. We're going into that inner sanctum of Hashem's presence, the Holy of Holies. And then finally the Sukkah. We go into the Sukkah, which is also the Holy of Holies. So we go into the Sukkah to go into this inner sanctum, into the sanctuary of Hashem, the palace of God, inside the Sukkah. So when we have the proper balance of the love and the fear, we deserve to go into the palace of Hashem. So the message is, we spent a whole day like angels yesterday inside the Holy of Holies, experiencing Hashem's proximity under the veil. True, it's under the veil of reverence, but the light is still shining upon us. So as we enter Shabbos, which is the perfect vessel of harmony, so let's allow ourselves the opportunity to embrace the music of fear and reverence of the Yom Kippur, together with the joy and the love that is hopping towards us from Sukkot, and know that Hashem is perfect, His Torah is perfect, His ways are perfect, and the whole of existence is nothing but a song, the song of Ha'azina.